Good evening. Welcome to St. Peter's Hove and another step on our journey through St. Mark's Passion narrative this Lent. I confess, as we come to this verse, we're now chapter 14, verses 57 and 58. I confess, when we come to this verse, I'm completely stumped. I've often found these verses exceptionally hard to understand, to translate, to interpret, if you like. We now are at the trial of Jesus, and the false witnesses come forward with their evidence, which is conflicting. And they say they can't find any evidence against Jesus. Some stood up and submitted this false evidence against him. We heard him say, "I am going to destroy this temple made by human hands, and in 3 days build another, not made by human hands." But even on this point, their evidence was conflicting. Now, it's such a mysterious verse. This thing, I'm going to destroy the temple, then rebuild it, and so on. It's such a mysterious verse that I think it must have been uttered at the trial of Jesus. I can't think that somebody who is trying to give an account of the trial and trying to make the account of the trial plausible would write that in. This must have happened, this very, very strange accusation. Now, it turns up also in St. John's Gospel. Why did the chief priests want to destroy Jesus? We know why the Pharisees disliked Jesus. It was out of envy. That is to say, they commanded a following among the people, but Jesus's following seemed to be in competition with their following amongst the so-called people of the land, the common people. And therefore the Pharisees were jealous of Jesus and wanted to get rid of him. But with the Sadducees, who didn't have a mass movement behind them, the Sadducees were aristocrats, they were the temple priests, and don't forget, in those days the temple priesthood was hereditary. They were the elite. They were a few very elite families. Don't forget, Caiaphas and Annas were related. Caiaphas was married to Annas' daughter. They didn't really care about the people of the land, about the common people. In fact, if you read St. John's Gospel, it makes it clear they despise the common people. And indeed, here they despise the common people because Jesus is a man from Nazareth, from Galilee, and they clearly don't really like him, as we'll see later on in a few verses' time. So why are they so against him? Because he threatens the temple. That's the answer. And that's what's hinted at in this verse, I think, that Jesus is somebody who threatens the temple worship. And indeed, in the Gospel of St. John, it sort of says, well, the Romans will come here and destroy our temple because of this man. And Jesus, talking of the destruction of the temple, goes down particularly badly. And we know that Jesus did predict the destruction of the temple in what we call the little apocalypse of St. Mark's Gospel, chapter 13, where he talks about Jerusalem being surrounded by armies and so on and so forth. The temple is going to end. Now, Jesus clearly believed the temple was going to end, clearly said so, and I think this verse is proof of that. And indeed, so it came to be that later, after the death and resurrection of Jesus, the temple was in fact destroyed and the temple worship ended. And therefore, with the end of the temple worship, there was the end of the Jewish priesthood. There's no Jewish temple today. There are no Jewish priests today. There are synagogues, which are in fact schools. Synagogues, places of teaching. Rabbis are teachers. There are no Jewish priests. So that era was coming to an end, and Jesus was the prophet of that era coming to an end. That's why, the idea was get rid of the prophet and maybe what he prophesies will not come to be. But what these people, the Sadducees, the priests of the temple, are fighting is, I can't say they're fighting progress, they're fighting the inevitability of history. But there's something theological here. It's not just that the Romans are going to come and destroy the temple. There's something much more theological. The temple was the only place in which worship could be offered to God and the sacrifices could be offered to God. Jesus has come to show us that we can worship God and offer him sacrifices everywhere. The sacrifice of praise, the sacrifice that comes from our hearts, and of course the holy sacrifice of the Mass, which is offered everywhere. There's now no longer just one temple, but the temples of the Lord are everywhere. Indeed, we ourselves are the temples of the Lord, because the Lord dwells in our hearts, does he not? So, therefore, Jesus' teaching on the temple was anathema to the Sadducees, and that is why they conspired to have him killed. We'll carry on with this tomorrow. Hope you've enjoyed that so far. Well, enjoy is not quite the word, is it? As we contemplate the passion of our blessed Lord. But you know what I mean. With all best wishes, see you again tomorrow. Bye.